All right, so we start off today with a filmmaker auteur from Germany. I'm going to be covering three auteurs as I normally do, only this time I'm going to start from outside the US. So we're going to start with a director called Fatih Akin. He's based out of Hamburg, Germany, and I believe he's the second filmmaker whose films I got introduced to after Tom Ticker with Run Lola Run. And the film that I got introduced to was in July. The reason why I'm stuttering is because some of these titles are actually in German, and my German ist nicht gut. Kann ich verstehen? So I'm going to be translating in my head the English titles. But In July is obviously a story that's set in July in the summer. And it's about a teacher played by Maurice Bleibtreu, who was also in Run Lola Run, if you see the connection. And he falls in love with a girl at a bazaar, and he has to trek all over Germany in order to find his true love. Once again, the themes of love. Only this time, it's almost like a road trip through regions of Germany. For any of you who've been to Germany, there's obviously the north, the middle, and the south. So this journey starts out in Hamburg, and then it makes its way to Bavaria, and I believe it makes its way down to Turkey. So it's a very nice take on the road trip slash mixed bag, mixed messages, and gives you a nice landscape of Germany. So his second film that I'm going to recommend is Soul Kitchen, which I believe came out maybe in 2003, 5. I'm going to have to fact check that. And this one's fun because it's more about Hamburg itself. I feel like it almost feels like a Tom DeCilio film, that it focuses on the characters of a particular neighborhood in Hamburg. And if you watch it, once again, it has Maurice Bleibtreu in it. For some reason, he just keeps showing up in a lot of the films that I like. And it's about a guy who tries to set up a restaurant in a sort of hipster, rundown, Bushwick type environment. And the characters and the girlfriends and the failures and the successes. And so it's more of a character study of a group of neighborhood types. So that's a nice departure from the road trip movie. And then my final movie for him is called Golden Glove, which is a rather strange departure for someone who's made movies that are a little more accessible in terms of their social kindness and empathy and compassion. And this particular film is really about a serial killer, but a serial killer in the sense of someone who isn't going out there stalking and looking to kill people, but who has a drinking problem, who has a loneliness problem, and who so happens to just, extinguish someone's life, and then it sort of becomes this repetitive habit. It's not something that was actually just made up. Once again, I think it examines Hamburg in a way that is typically not seen, at least from a cinematic point of view. And if you look at a lot of the production notes, a lot of them actually take the police footage and recreate these scenes and these locations in the room. So I thought that kind of documentary style blended with fiction, or the ability to be fictionalized, was a very good rounded way of showing that an auteur can really just work in different genres. So we're gonna dip down to France, and we're gonna go with Luc Besson. Anyone who doesn't know Luc Besson: Fifth Element, Mila Jovovich, Bruce Willis, Chris Tucker. So having some fun in the cinematic genre of sci-fi, as opposed to all the serious stuff that sometimes come out, I thought Luc Besson would be perfect, because he's done serious films, but he's also been the biggest commercial French director whose films play overseas. You have multiple actors from around the world in his movies, as you could have witnessed by Fifth Element. And so I think Fifth Element just being a story about, it's a story about the saving of the world, but what movie that is Marvel based isn't? But I like this particular one just because of the set design and how they kind of projected the future. I think movies like Blade Runner have much more of a realistic, sort of gritty, grungy look, and Fifth Element is a little sunnier and a little more comedic, and so I would recommend that definitely. My next movie for him would be La Femme Nikita. La Femme Nikita is one of those films that was translated into a TV series, and it ran in the 90s, but the original to me has always stood as the foundation of what storytelling can be through action and through vulnerability. And I think Luc Besson has always been good at that, taking a vulnerable young lady who's on the outskirts of life and putting her in a situation in which she gets trained into being a lethal killer. But the way that he plots that and the way that he develops that character through the beginning of being destitute and then being taken in and trained and then leaving and having to get a life and having to get a boyfriend and having to navigate this professional life with a relationship, I think he handled very well. And it gives you some nice shots of 90s New York, 90s Paris. And so that's another one I'd recommend, because you're going to see a lot of filmmakers who pull from it. And then my third movie for him would be, I'm going to go with The Professional, because it's set in New York. But once again, if you can tell, Luc Besson's themes typically tend to have women in them, you know, and not girls and women, but just very strong female characters, and there's an emphasis on that that's a pattern. And in The Professional, with Natalie Portman's character and Gary Oldman and Jean Reno, there's just a nice dichotomy of just female gentility, femininity, and just the action genre as a whole. And so The Professional, I think, being set in New York, but also featuring an American cast with a British Gary Oldman, is almost like the English version of La Femme Nikita, but at a much younger age. So that's Luc Besson, The Professional, Fifth Element, La Femme Nikita. And now we go on to Sidney Lumet. Sidney Lumet is an American director. We're back home. And the reason I went with Sidney is because Sidney has done movies like Network, which I believe was shot in the 70s. It was shot in the 70s, definitely not the 80s. And it's about network television and about ratings and about how the networks will do anything to get ratings, including going so far as to even advertise or promote killings. Now that's a bit of a stretch right there, but it's a nice movie that just shows how network television is just really based more on getting ratings at the expense of any kind of I don't know, social welfare. So Network is a good one that I'm recommending. And then I'm going to dip into something like Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, and that stars the late Philip Seymour Hoffman and Ethan Hawke and Marissa Tomei. And it's a much smaller film. It's just really a story of someone who's a little down on their luck, in the sense of they're just fiending for money, and so they decide to steal from their own family, and that goes wrong. And as the movie says, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, it's a very kind of darker journey through one character's mistakes and how those mistakes cost him. So that's one that I'm gonna add to juxtapose from Network, which is a much more, I guess, social political commentary. And then I was gonna go with Dog Day Afternoon, starring Al Pacino, which is a 60s movie, I believe. I'm gonna have to fact check that. And once again, that's another film that sort of deals with social commentary. The only difference is that, once again, someone is trying to rob a bank and they get stuck, and it becomes this sort of standoff between the cops and the hostage takers. And within that, we just sort of see another personal story with the character that Al Pacino's lover is in, is trying to just get money to have a sex change. And so I think, you know, there are these themes of politics, but also the personal politics of that sort of bleed into the larger sphere of things. So Sidney Lumet, Network, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, and Dog Day Afternoon. And those are the 3 auteurs for this particular session, and hope to see you in class. Adrian Mukasa, Director of Film Auteurs. Speak to you later.